implications of creating new districts. We initially had, okay, we currently have 146 districts. That means now the number of districts will continue to grow. And Dr. Werihe, you'll kick off this discussion. I remember a time when one person ate a live rat in his efforts to push for a district, I think in eastern Uganda.
As in Tororo.
In Tororo, exactly. And this craze for new districts keeps coming. After this decision, even people in Kasanda are saying they also want new districts carved out of Kasanda. No, carved out of that Greater Murende. Other new districts carved out. I don't know what you think are the implications of this decision.
Thank you very much, Apple. I'm going to discuss not only as a panelist here,
please,
but also as a person who has interest in Tororo, because we have a home in Tororo. My father built there, and I grew up there.
And actually, this decision seems to have popular support on the ground.
Yeah, but just like you gave the preamble, I think it is important that we look at the whole districtization, okay, which others are calling decentralization. We give it a broader look. When we started this decentralization, it had pertinent objectives. The government said we intended to democratize leadership by delegating certain powers to the local governments so that they are able to understand problems from near and be able to solve them. They also say this decentralization and having those local strong units will help us to mobilize domestic revenue so that our revenue basket increases to solve the problems at a grassroots level. Of course, the other objective of decentralization was to enhance participation of the people, public participation in the leadership, and at that level, and like in budgeting, whereby you have the the sub-county budget conferences, where the public is supposed to be invited to to have a say on what kind of budget they are generating, which will serve them better. Now, in the beginning, everybody seemed to be serious and focused on that. But also, at the start of creating more districts, the issue was that some of the districts were so distant and inaccessible.
Taking services nearer to the people.
Exactly. So by making a place a district, you knew that it would come with a road, which government is obligated to maintain under the central government, and therefore it could create a place accessible, and people in that area can get services that they would like to get from the mother district, like Mbarara, Isinjiro, the distance, and then some of those districts like Buhweju and the Bushenyi. So initially, it moving from the 31 districts going, I think initially it was sensible. But now for local governments to function effectively, the units should be of reasonable size. Because when they are of reasonable size, you also have to consider the level of economic activity in that district, whether you are able to raise revenue to contribute to the resource basket to offer the services. And also, you know that when a district is created, other administrative units also are being created. More sub-counties, more villages, and all translate into elective political offices. Elective offices, but also and a few technical ones. So, now what challenges is the local government facing today? Local governments. One, that if you look at the entire national budget, less than 8% of the budget goes to the local governments. the entire 92% remains where?
At the
At
center.
the center. So meaning that the local governments, those units even don't have the resources to recruit. You go to Namisindwa there, the jobs are there, but they cannot recruit. You find many, actually the average employment rate in these districts is about 50%. Half of the jobs are not filled because money is here. Now the argument is, but still, that the government says, even if we have all the money here, but still we also support other services in the districts that are not done by the local government. It sounds reasonable, but my concern is the politics later came in where people are craving for political offices at a local level. A person who was a councillor at the sub-county wants to become a chairman and a member of the district executive committee deck, and then sit there and get some salary or allowances. Then the other, which the politicians have done, Uganda was not so much tribal. You know, tribalism was not such a big thing. Okay? But today, even within the same tribes, we have sub-tribes that are, you know, promoting that chauvinism within their locality. If you go to Bugisu, every 5 minutes you drive, you are in a new district. And then when you go reach there, if you are from Namisindwa, a person coming from Namisindwa to get a job in Bududa is a tug of war, because the people in Bududa speak a different dialect, and they said that was theirs, they were given, nobody else is supposed to access. If you go to Sironko, the accent is also different, but we're all Bagisu. Also, if you go to Bulambuli, the Lugisu spoken there is also different. And now Ombale has remained with the Lugisu accent of Central.
So you
come
find,
to Busoga,
you find that very problematic.
I find that very problematic because this government has been at the center of promoting regionalism, integration of the East African, African unity and things like that. But at the local level, we are splitting people into very, very small units. And so these divisions make it hard for people to sit and discuss big things. So they all focus on small things that are happening at their local level. They will discuss whose son has sold a bull and bought a job, who has that, those small things, instead of focusing on things that affect the entire either region or the entire country. The focus is on that. And then lastly, I want to speak about Tororo specifically.
It looks like people really badly wanted these districts. The people on the ground.
For those who don't know the history of Tororo, Tororo was a multi-ethnic district. It had Busia, which is predominantly Basamia. It had actually entire Palisa, the old Palisa was part of Tororo. It had the Butaleja, the Banyole. Now, those other tribes went off. The Busia people, the Basamia went with Busia. The Banyole went with Butaleja. Now, within Tororo district, it remained two major tribes. The Itesots, that were predominantly Tororo County, and then the Japadola, which was predominantly the how they call it, well, I will remember West Budama and North Budama County. Now it has been split into three. And then we had a municipality. Now, Tororo municipality was very cosmopolitan. If you go to Tororo today, the native Japadola are less than 20% in the town. Less than 20%, according to Electoral Commission census. Then also we have Itesots, who are also very few. Actually, if you add the Bagisu and other tribes, Basoga, who are in Tororo, they can outnumber this. And partly, I think, that is why Sanje, for me, Sanje Tana used to be a very neutral character, being of an Asian race, would unite many of those tribes. But later, one tribe ganged up against him and they turned the whole thing tribal, saying this Indian cannot represent our interests. But when you, I want to ask the people in Toro, when you go to Japadola, what has changed? Which Sanjay was not doing. And you know, this balkanization is going to turn Uganda into a boiling pot. Busoga, which I want to conclude with. If you go to Busiki, they have Basoga with a different accent. You go to Bulamoji, the Balamoji in Kaliro, also with a different accent. Jinja, different accent. But now these things are playing out more under the NRM decentralization. Before they were silent. Now they need to, they have awakened them. And you saw that those fights over Chabazinga sheep. You find that the Balamoji who speak a similar language with the Basiki are together, and then the Kamuli people are uniting with the Jinja people. Those divisions. But if we are saying colonialists were using divide and rule, are we not attempting to do divide the same? Now, if I go and look at the services, if I look at health, yes, primary health care has improved in quite a number of districts. In districts like our districts there, because of gravity water scheme, which is the Minister of Water and National Water, it has improved. Education is very poor, has collapsed. You look at the roads, I've not seen any new roads, community roads opened by these small local governments.
Dr. Wanzara, do creation of a new district really help improve the services in that area?
In most of, if you look at various reports, because we have reports of civil society, reports of government itself, the creation of many districts, yes, has improved services in some areas. But in the majority of the districts, it has not. Because the resources have been diverted to politicking, and then you have so many mouths that want to swallow the same money. Now you go, a sub-county used to be a model, where you go, like my sub-county, you'd find a fish pond there, you'd find a tractor at the sub-county, you'd find a cooperative, you'd find a social center, a youth social center, a court, and a local administration police. Now, many sub-counties are very useless. You reach a sub-county, it has become a store of coffee. People keep their coffee, and then the sub-accountant and the Gomola chief meet in town to share the interest, and they drink beer. You used to have an agriculture officer residing at the sub-county and works up to inspect farms and supported by the District Farm Institute to train farmers. Now, right now, we recruit veterinary officers, we recruit agriculture officers, but they don't have the tools. So when they get their job at the district, they rent in town
so in essence,
to wait for salary, which cripple service delivery.
If the funds were not decentralized, I mean taken to the center, these new districts would actually make meaning. I mean, would help improve services.
But even
if it was not for the funds, majority of the funding being taken, the funds being taken to the center.
No, I don't agree with that. Of course, there has been an argument that government collecting the domestic revenue and taking the consolidated fund has affected service delivery. Say yes and no. Why? The local governments are also very corrupt. Actually, when the government started collecting this money, the local revenue collection increased. It actually increased. The problem is with the late disbursement of the money. Because they claim but if you have a work plan, sometimes people sit with the work plan, they don't start the procurement process, then they wait to firefight. Because when you wait and you firefight, then you are likely to cause mishaps, and you hide behind the lack of time. The lack of time. But generally, for me, what I think is that probably we need to be serious, because just a few years ago, this very term of this government, they said, finally, we have put a stop on creation of new administrative units, and we focus on strengthening the existing ones. For me, that would have been a more sensible issue.
All right. I gave you more time because you said even you have a home in Tororo. Just 1 minute, one more minute on addressing the conflicts within this area. Leave alone what you talked about, that now every clan will be clamoring for a district or an administrative unit. But there has been long-standing conflicts in this area. We know it for a very long time. If the local leaders have agreed that this would solve that conflict, do you think that was a viable decision? To give them a district, then solve that conflict once and for all.
Now, I want to ask the question. When the president
Like now we have the conflict of Apa.
Yes.
The Madi and the
Acholi.
If, well, this is the solution, long-standing solution.
But you know, if you compare Apa and this one, the two are totally different. Because Apa, the Acholi, they claim an area over land. But now the issue of Tororo, I want to attribute the clamoring for districts to failure in service delivery. If people in Budama and people in Tororo County were all getting quality government services, there wouldn't be need for them to quarrel over creating districts here and there. So this particular one could be diffused, but more conflicts will emerge again by the politicians in the new ones, arising from sharing jobs, sharing money, contracts, because this is what we are seeing playing out almost in all other new districts.
Thank you. Timothy, what do you think about this craze for new districts and new administrative units?
So I think that first of all, Tororo district and the neighboring district is very unique. And part of the compromise that the head of state had to give in the recent decisions that were reached at was the question of the conflict that was there. So I know that I would want to imagine that this issue has actually been recurring, and the president and the other stakeholders have attempted to resolve this, but there has not been a solution. So I want to imagine that there had been extensive discussions, but also collaboration. My take is that I think this is very unsustainable in terms of creating new, more administrative units as a mechanism of addressing governance issues in districts. I imagine that many of the districts, some of the districts in the country, and including the regions, have conflicts. Do we have to resolve those through creation of new administrative units? I think not. I think that there is need for us to look for more strategic options, creating coexistence as opposed to...
What's wrong with creating new districts if the locals, want these districts, and if it would improve service delivery in the area?
I don't know, Apple, where do you get that the locals received this?
At least we've seen them jubilating. Local leaders saying...
No, they actually wrote petitions. That is true. But your question is about the viability.
I think, you see, my observation really, and talking to some of the colleagues there, I think it's largely a political stand, especially for those that are looking at standing and maybe taking advantage of the opportunities that come along, especially from the political perspective and the political positions, because you see those are the fellas that are mobilizing the people to create some sort of picture that this is greatly welcome. But my reading on ground and have had discussions with people who are there, they seem to think that it's not a viable option. But going to the question of even viability of some of these administrative units, as I highlighted, most of these administrative units require resources for them to be viable,
to run efficiently.
And if there are no resources, because every new administrative unit comes with costs. You have to create new offices, administrative units, hire staff, put up in infrastructure for most of these. And the most recent cities that we've actually created, we have Hoima, we have. They actually remain. Some activities remain non-operational.
I don't know what has changed in my home city of Mbarara.
Mbarara. I think
Garama will help me.
That would be a good assessment. But I think, but the question of funding remains paramount. We spend less than 10% of our total budget on the devolved systems, and even when we take those resources there, there's a lot of power that is still being held from the center. And so even the actual equalization of the many of the activities. I studied the 2023-2024 budget. I did an extensive work there, and noticed that we gave the local governments then, the budget was around 52.7 trillion shillings. Of that total amount of money, the money that we took to the local governments was around 5.2 trillion. Of the 5.2 trillion that we took to the local governments, 4.2 trillion was used in wages, salaries, and the management of
almost 90%
recurrent expenditure.
The recurrent expenditure. So you are left with a trillion or less
for
development and the rest of the things. I have had discussions with colleagues who work in the local governments, and the kind of stories they share with me are very disturbing. That even the little resources that they are allocated, they actually eat a bigger percentage of that resource. And there is very little amount of that money that actually goes into execution of the work. And so I think that creation of new district is not sustainable, especially to address conflict. Because to what end how many districts are you going to create to appease the people? Also, looking at some of these administrative units, I've been in Tororo. I studied there for some time. For example, if you go to a municipality now called Nagongera, you can be on the one end of Nagongera, and you can call the colleague on the other side, and they hear. You can have a conversation. You say, "Hi, Gerard, how are you? Good morning."
And that
some of these administrative units.
Yeah. That's a sub-county. What is that?
It's a municipality.
A municipality?
Yes, it is a municipality. Now, the point is really to say that the economic viability of these administrative units, when you look at even how much money probably is coming there, but also there's this lie that we've been sold that there's service coming close to the people. What service when there's no money? Because you see, service should come with money. And if the money that's coming goes into largely management and administrative and the recurrent expenditure, so it's really a waste of time. And also, lastly, probably is to also highlight the politics in this. So for Tororo specifically, in the last elections of 2021, we saw that the ruling government under President Museveni received the NRM party garnered around 86,000 votes.
From the whole district?
From the district. NUP got around, they got around 46,000. NRM actually took up to 60% of the total votes. And I think that also wanting to assess that from the political angle, you want to see that it could be also a strategy from the political angle to ensure that probably there is more votes coming from
to create new constituencies
in order to garner more votes.
Counteract
it's a strategy of
the influence.
It's a strategy of gerrymandering. Trying to also create new institutions for political stance.
Thank you so much, Timothy. And our viewers, send in your comments now. The number is 0701609906. My producer will run it on the screen, and I will be reading those comments. We are looking at the implications of creating new districts, and especially looking at the timing during this time when the country is undergoing financial and economic challenges, but also we are actually in the middle of an electoral process. But again, is it true that these new administration or administrative units will help improve service delivery or not? That is the question we must be asking. Dr. Rugarama, tell us what you think about these new districts now. The list seems to be growing every day.
For me, my take really
Were
is
they 36 when you
initially
came into power?
Initially
Or 21?
they were 20.
36. As of 1990,
Yeah.
we had
No.
36.
When NRM came to power, that was not 90. We're talking
No,
about
for the actual
86.
statistics.
86. Yes, I think we were somewhere in
21?
20 something.
20,
Yeah, 20 something.
Now we have 146.
But that can be
and
explained.
the list is growing.
Yeah, that can be explained. Of course, our worry now, which my brother Timo and Dr. Gerard were expounding on, is that we seem to have this mushrooming, the huge expansion of the administrative units and at a terrific speed. But that they are created, there will always be reasons as to why some of these administrative units are created. And it is even provided for. There are relevant laws, relevant instruments that provide for the creation of administrative units. Probably, maybe let me start with the issue of electoral areas. You see, the challenge, given my background, the challenge is that when you introduce these administrative units, because with the Electoral Commission, by the way, it was such that, and it hasn't changed anyway, I don't know how they are going to navigate this, that at a certain, beyond a certain point, if new administrative units are created, then there is not going to be elections carried out in those new administrative units. That's what it is. But you see, when the president has given a political gift to a community, I want to believe that my friends at the Electoral Commission Uganda will have hard time telling the same people that they are not going to hold elections, the new constituencies are not going to be created, and that the political maneuverers are not going to have their way in those new areas. It is going to be a tug of war. I want to believe that some of these things are going to be weaved, and when they weaver them, then these new political players are going to come.
Is it true that the Electoral Commission will not conduct election?
It is very difficult. Ordinarily, if we are to go by what is stated in the law, they shouldn't, because we are at a point where it is very difficult now to go back and...
Because actually even the party, NRM, has already
absolutely, they have already...
But
that one is even a party. We're talking about a country now. Any political party can give its own excuse. It doesn't even matter that NRM is the ruling party. We are talking about the planning of electoral commission and at what stage the cycle of electoral cycle they are. It would be very difficult for them to really go back and carry out elections in these new administrative units. But I'm not a prophet of doom. I'm not a Jewish prophet, but I can prophesy that I think elections are going to take place there, because from the political point of view, my observation, my camera is telling me that the intention, partly, the reason for creating these new administrative units, especially in the Tororo area, is political reward. Bringing services closer to the people used to be one of the reasons. Probably we have got some areas. I worked in Kabare, for instance. I will tell you that the far end towards Kisoro, and coming back to maybe like towards this boundary of Ntungamo,
Muhanga.
because that's where the Muhanga area was quite a distance. So if, for instance, you divide and then you have that part as Ruchiga, then the other one is it Rwanda or something it is, then that can be justified. But there used to be such a thing as a certificate of financial implication. I thought Jared would talk about it, but maybe he left it for me. I want to believe that the certificate of financial implication has been provided in creating these new administrative units. If it has not been provided
by
it's
who?
from the ministry. It's Ministry of Finance.
This was
And it is presented
was a
in,
meeting.
it is presented in Parliament.
Yes,
Yeah.
that's true.
Now, if it has not been, Comrade Apollo, if it has not been, then you can see
maybe at the level of
the
gazetting.
challenges.
I mean,
No,
even if
No,
actually,
this is
when
what
they are
it is.
creating-
That before you undertake such, let me tell you, before the death of Keith Muhakanizi,
Yeah.
may his
The
soul
former
rest in
PSSP.
eternal peace, he was very clear that we are not going to have new administrative units because the money is not
there.
available. Now, you could understand Muhakanizi from the point of view that he is a man in finances. He was a man of money. And he would not see it. Whenever he would open his valve, there was no money. And this business of borrowing, you see, you must borrow against something. When you start borrowing, and I think Uganda, the economists will tell you, Professor, the deputy governor, Bank of Uganda, Nwagaba, he used to say, even before he became the deputy governor, that you see, Uganda, we have reached a point whereby we can, like Burundi, for instance, it's very difficult for Burundi to borrow externally. They have reached a point whereby they are not allowed to be borrowing. Now,
Our public debt has hit 160.
they have got certain percentages there whereby they say now this average area where you are, it's very difficult for you as a
because
country
your rating
to borrow. Now, if we borrow for purposes of paying salaries, then that's a very big problem. And I think there is a fear that Uganda sometimes borrows to pay salaries. But you see, that one against the statistics that our auntie Beth Olive Namsango Kamia gave us, that we lose, is it above 3 trillion?
10 trillion.
10, you can
Every
imagine,
year.
through corruption. So my think now, it again takes me back to what my senior brother, Professor Chinua Achebe said. The problem of Nigeria is leadership. So the problem that we have in Uganda still now is leadership. That even if you do not mutilate this country into districts, if you have provided very good leadership, and that's why I was agreeing with the late, may his soul rest in eternal peace, the departed president of, vice president of Sudan, then Garanga John. When he was, for him, he was not for the further division of Sudan. He said, give me Sudan the way it is. I will provide clear leadership, and you will see no difference between a Noah, you will see no difference between a Dinka, you will see no difference between these people who call themselves Simanyi Muslims. All of us shall be Sudanese. This business of people eating rats in Tororo, that they want districts, they are influenced by self-seeking politicians who are interested in gaining political office. The day we start sacrificing service delivery to the people and we make politics a business, politics has become a business. People are fighting to join parliament. People are fighting to create constituencies. People are fighting to become councillors, simply not because they want to offer services to their people. I'm not saying that everybody, there are these people who are in parliament, there are people who are councillors, and they are focused to delivering. But the bad apples are becoming too many.
Question is
that the creation of new administrative areas is mainly to create political offices, because politics now in Africa and in Uganda in particular has become a business.
Question is,
yes.
Couldn't your president see that?
Interestingly, this is what it is. You see, running a government is not a simple thing. And that is why the former prime minister and one time, Professor Poronsvambi was talking vehemently when he was still lecturing at Makerere about a living wage. When he was brought into government and he was given various responsibilities, Minister of Public Service, Prime Minister, they said, now provide the living wage. He died without coming anywhere closer to providing a living wage.
So your president is also, your president's hands are also tied.
Yes, sometimes, by the way, the president can be taken hostage. We have seen people who come like the presidents of these so-called big countries, because and they say they are going to do all sorts of things, but sometimes they reach and things cannot work.
Apollo, if you may, in a minute.
Okay.
So I think that, you see, the question of resources is a fallacy. We've recently been at the national discussions around MPs receiving some resources as a reward for having received some amount of money. 100 million, others received more. 100 million can actually finance some of these administrative units. Actually, 100 million is more than what some of these administrative units receive to facilitate some of their work.
Yeah, I see them quarreling for 2 million a quarter.
Absolutely.
These small town councils where there's only town
the amount of money.
No, but also let's remember that we have got so many districts and the number is increasing, which get money. Just a minute. First of all, they have got units. Every district has got what we call like a construction or engineering unit. But ask them.
They receive more than 1 billion.
Yes, ask them how many roads they make and how many bridges they open up and construct. But what I wanted to mention is that we have got a very unfortunate growing trend where money is devolved from the central to the district.
All right.
And do you know what happens? It comes back. They have not utilized it.
Apple, I didn't get the chance to
please conclude in
I
just 1 minute.
In light of the question of the certificate of financial implication, it's also say that it does, like in our current situation, it seems not to matter. Because you see, what we've seen is, even for most of these, say, a bill that is being presented in Parliament, it's accompanied by a certificate of financial implication. Every bill. And the bills are most of these bills are actually redundant because they are not being financed. There is no an allocation to operationalize a specific bill. And so when it comes to specifically for local government, in our budget, we realize less than 80% of the total budget in disbursing them. And even when we say that we are going to get resources from here to facilitate this district and that kind of thing, I think it's all a decoy, really, to say that
that is partly why the public debt is growing.
I mean, it's a big time problem, but also that public debt, looking at it only from external borrowing, is because we have a lot of debt, including the domestic debt, which actually sometimes is not considered.
Thank you so much, gentlemen. Our time is running out. Let me read out some of the messages that are coming in. RDC Chinese Senyonjo is watching. Thank you. He sends a message here, and he usually sends a long one. Apollo, thanks for that very interesting topic, which is very dear to me. I did a study on that very subject that I termed districtization, where I was interrogating whether the promised services are realized or not. But as early as when I was in Manafa, I realized that much as agitators ask for districts in the name of services nearer to the people, those who benefit more are the elite. Who win political posts like LC5 chair, those whose children get jobs as CFOs. What are CFOs?
Chief
Financial Officers. DCDOs, etc. Those who win contracts, etc. Service delivery to the commons may remain the same due to limited funds, embezzlement, and other bottlenecks. Number 2, district status is for prestige, especially where a district has weak economic base. Political decentralization without physical decentralization has challenges. I think that is what you were, gentlemen, talking about. NRM got Uganda having 33 districts. Correct, us. Thank you. And increased them from 39 to 39 and now 146. Tororo City, I need to carry out a study on citynization and the implication to meaningful urbanization. Are there parameters that qualify a setup for a state status? And that is Chinese Nyonjo. He says he was in Manafa in 2017, 2018, under academician Green 2010. Well, thank you so much, Chinese Nyonjo, and he actually supplements what we've talked about here.
But as you read those messages up also, let me give you this information that I have been to China and not just for tourism, taking deep studies. I have come to realization that China for about 15 or so years ago took a deliberate effort to create cities. Even where there were mere towns, deliberate government efforts to create cities, and they would redirect their energies, that Central Communist Party of China, to making sure that it becomes cities, and they have become cities.
And the area develops.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, but their level of organization is so
and
high.
planning.
This is the leadership I was talking about. Leadership,
because
therefore.
Thanks for the topic, Apollo. I am Regan, ambassador from Bushenyi. Thank you for watching. Regan. Yeah, he could be an ambassador. And gentlemen, I have only 6 minutes to wind up. Well done, team. Sincerely, Uganda instead needs a reduction of these units and handle infrastructure and also end corruption. Ocheng in Chireka. Thank you so much, gentlemen and ladies watching. Let's conclude. We only have 6 minutes. Utilize 2 minutes each of us. Let's give our final comments. Doctor, the public debt is soaring. Looks like we don't have money.
Yeah, I recollect we borrowed the money to operationalize a number of cities, very many. And like we argued here, the first thing that we did was when you create the units, you see people beginning to campaign. And yet we have court rulings here after some municipalities were created that actually government had sidestepped the role of the Electoral Commission, which creates those elective positions. So we have not learned anything. Then two, if we are promoting urbanization, let's be logical. Let's have common sense. Because if you create 16 cities at a go, are you going to be able to develop them?
Yes.
Today, Egypt is developing another city west of Cairo. But they are
different from Alexandria?
Yes, different. They are putting billions of dollars to ensure that the facilities that are there are built to attract people.
Yeah.
Our neighbors, Kenya, how many cities do they have since independence? But because a city is not by name, it's just like you can annex an area and you call it a city, but the villages there will remain villages, no transformation. Just like if you would pick a lizard from outside and you throw it in water and you think it will be
a crocodile
fish or a crocodile, you will be wasting time. I think let's be reasonable. We have agreed here that creating certain districts was reasonable.
Yeah.
We have also said that in some areas services improved. However, we need to revisit.
That is what RDC Cheyune is talking about, that he's going to take a study on citynization.
Yes, because he has experience from Manafa. You know, he's very good. He caned the people in Manafa who drink in the morning, Marwa and so forth. And people started waking up. But corruption in local government is so much, with the little resources they receive, is so much entangled in cliques. Just to conclude, when we were in Mbale said no services, we went to Manafa. Hardly a year, Bududa went off.
The district.
Then in Amisindwa. Now in Amisindwa we are fighting village for village.
Oh.
So where next are we going to create the district?
Comrade Rugarama,
We shall cross to Kenya and create another
your
district
concluding
there.
remarks. on
No,
this show?
I am very sure, because we have always claimed, and I think correctly so, that the Balkanization of Africa as a continent is one of the leading causes of underdevelopment. It was greatly underscored in the paper presented by Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, whereby in South Africa 2010, he looked at the bottlenecks of what are the bottlenecks of Africa's development. The Balkanization was looked at as one of them. I want to believe, therefore, that when we bring it down here to a country and we start creating numerous districts, which we do not follow up with proper leadership, we create a problem
Just because one ethnic
has
group is
claiming
clamoring for
that they want to have a district. In actual sense, really, if we tightened and we offered proper leadership, political and otherwise, we tightened on the issue of corruption, we dispensed correct leadership across the board, we would have a situation whereby we don't have to create so many districts.
Thank you. Timothy, your concluding remarks, please.
No, I think for me really is to direct my call on the country. You know, being that this country is the only country that we have, having extremism on both sides, irrespective of where you stand on, may lead this country to a place that we all not desire. We've seen the different the systems not to be working. Our healthcare systems are in shambles. Our education system, our infrastructure, we've just discussed. We keep losing people on our roads. And so it calls for leadership, it calls for attention. If we do not address these challenges through a clear governance framework, most likely we may degenerate in a worse state.
Wow.
And as we celebrate today the
World Press Freedom
Day, is really to thank the journalists and all the colleagues in the media for the great work that they're doing amidst the tough times. And to say that better times are ahead, but for where we are today, we have to continue pushing and to continue demanding for better.
Thank you so much, Timothy Chemonges. Thank you so much, Dr. Daniel Garama and Dr. Gerard Werihewanzala. Our time is up. We still have hope that this country will be better. Things will get better. Let's also do our responsibilities and do what we're supposed to do.
Apollo, we don't even have a second.
Which second?
A second whereby I state that since NRM came to power, we have grown in terms of mass communication. TVs have increased, radios have increased, telephones have increased, access to information has increased to the extent that we have got very many avenues where we can critique and sometimes abuse the government.
The only question is how now those media practitioners are operating when they are being roughed up.
We shall sort that one out.
My name is Prince Apollo. Thank you so much for tuning in, and thank you so much for being good followers. Those who sent in comments on observation, thank you so much. We left some aside, but we'll come back to look to them next time. Until next Saturday, good afternoon to you. God bless you, and God bless Uganda.